The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the QATV staff or board of directors. QATV, in compliance with FCC regulations, is prohibited from exercising control over the content of independent, member-produced public access programming.
I know that you are the chief of police here in Quincy, and so what I would like to do is, could you tell me a little bit about the role that you play in as chief of police and here in Quincy, and how do you address those issues that people are concerned about?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues that we address, Wesley, and I mean, you mentioned some of the really big ones that any urban city in this country is dealing with, and I think in the city of Quincy we do an exceptional job of dealing with the challenges. We have the support from the political administration. Mayor Koch and the city councilors have been great. Our social service agencies we work hand in hand with. I took over in June, and we really established a community services unit.
Sure.
That it's sort of a community policing, but they also do follow-ups with overdose follow-ups. We have a full-time mental health clinician,
Sure.
Tim O'Brien, that works in the community services unit, and he goes out and meets people after an overdose. Our Narcan program is first in the nation, where we're the first department in the country to administer equipment nasal Narcan
Sure.
to all of our officers in patrol. And this has been going on, I believe, since 2008 we started that. And
Sure.
I mean, thousands of lives have been impacted by Quincy police officers, first responding officers being the first ones there to administer nasal Narcan and
Sure.
reverse some of these overdoses. But there's a lot that's happening in the city. There's
Sure.
a lot of, between Quincy Community Action and Father Bills and,
Sure.
the Quincy Veterans Council that are reaching out to homeless veterans. And we're a city that does care. I know there's been a lot of talk with the city's resistance on building the Long Island Bridge, say, for instance, right? As that's going to be that somehow the city doesn't care about people in distress and in crisis, and
Sure.
nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, you just look around the city of Quincy at the services that we offer,
Sure.
if somebody is in need, they're going to get it here in Quincy.
Sure. And yeah, and I and so those are the things that I definitely want to highlight that people don't normally know unless they inquire about it. And so that's why I wanted to kind of highlight that and say thank you for what, not only what you do, but what your officers do in terms of, community service.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the credit belongs to them. They're the ones on the street doing it every day.
Absolutely.
I'm in an office looking at computer screens and answering phone calls, so the credit belongs to them. They're out in the
Sure.
front lines doing it day in and day out. So.
Right. Has there ever been a time where Father Bills would access your services when it comes to a call that comes in and say, hey, we can't deal with we deal with a guest, and you all are, your officers are responding to the call. Is that something that you find that's been happening frequently? And if so, how do you handle those types of calls that come into your office?
Yeah, so I mean, responding to Father Bills, I mean the old shelter right behind the police station, and then the newer expanded shelter that has a lot more services than the old one used to. The old one used to be a registry of motor vehicles a long time ago, and so they really repurposed it into the shelter.
Okay.
So now they're actually into a much nicer, larger structure with more support services and things like that.
Sure.
So I think we were talking the other day, and anytime you move, they say it's one of the most stressful things. I was talking to the library director here, Sarah, and she brought up a great point because there is a nexus everywhere in the city,
Sure.
and they say one of the most stressful things to go through is a move, and I wasn't thinking of it like this, but they were moving. The homeless community was moving from the old Father Bills that they knew, and they were comfortable in, and they knew their way around. And I respect the fact that there is a level of stress moving into a new facility, even though we say, oh, it's going to be better, and it's nicer, and it's cleaner, and it's brand new, and it has, more services. It's still a stressful thing to move from one place that you're comfortable with to something new, right? So in terms of us responding to calls, we respond to Father Bills for a number of things. Could be a medical, could be, an assault in the past or things like that. But, Father Bills staff has always been, they've put a real priority in maintaining confidentiality of the people that stay there. And, we've always respected that line, that there are some things they can tell us and some things they can't. But certainly when they need us, if there's a safety issue, we're going to respond. If somebody's in, a medical crisis, we're going to respond. But a lot of the internal things they really handle on their own. And I know they really put a value on the good neighbor policy. That people are going to stay there. They're expected to comport with certain behaviors and be a good community member. And that's one of the things that we really look at too, Wesley, is we have community police officers for every ward in the city, represent, whether it's Squantum or Germantown or different areas of the city have a community police officer. And what I really felt was lacking was that the homeless are a group in our community. And so we did, when we took over, we assigned one of our officers, Officer Ryan Donley, and he's basically the liaison to Father Bills, and he's developed a really great relationship, not only at Father Bills, but at the library. It's been really good so far. They've actually talked about maybe giving them an office there so we could have office hours, so if people in the homeless community had an issue, maybe they just wanted advice on something, maybe they wanted, they're having a problem with somebody else, or maybe they're getting harassed. And and the other big thing, Wesley, is we also recognize that the homeless community is nationwide victimized at a much higher rate than the rest of the population. And they're a vulnerable population, so we respect that, and we're doing our best to try and address that. And we're not going to arrest our way out of homelessness. We're not looking to just be the people that move people along. You see people out, certain parts of the city that are panhandling, and we look and we say, there's no place, you don't need that. We have, and I've stopped up and I said, hey, is there something you need? What service, so you don't have to stand out here, what service can we get you?
So it's not always, not to cut you off, but I get it. It's not always.
We could be referral specialists.
Right? So it's not always like, I guess trying to create that sense of humanity, and not opposed to approaching a situation where there's some sort of dehumanizing, approach to public safety. And trying to address those issues. And again, it could be kind of. It's a fine line. It's a delicate walk that I guess all these institutions and that exist here in Quincy have to take when it comes to. So the question is, how do we create a bridge? How do we have more of a understanding when it comes to harm reduction? To lessen the harm of all of the stuff that obviously exists. Not only in this community, but in a lot of communities. But I do like the idea of what you had just mentioned, of how they can create sort of a liaison, a go-to person that can take on those issues. Because from me meeting with some of the homeless populations, it was kind of disheartening to me to hear that, and being that the police department is actually right next door to the new shelter, and I was thinking, well, I guess they would have a little bit more access to community policing in terms of trying to change the trajectory or the perception of the police coming in. That it's not always about trying to arrest your way out of trying to understand what the condition that these people obviously suffer from. But how do we have more of a humane way of understanding what people going through, of what that population is going through?
Yeah, that's a great point, Wesley,
yeah.
and I think that it starts with trust, right? Like people
Sure.
aren't going to come to you for help if they don't trust you.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I know that, and that's sort of why Officer Donnelly was handpicked for that role. He's just he's just a naturally he's a great police officer. But he's a good person.
Sure.
And he gets it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's built relationships with people over there, and people have come to him for help, and you know.
Sure,
and they
sure.
trust them. So I think with our department, trust is huge.
Sure, it
so,
is.
And
Absolutely.
I think we have a great relationship with the public and with this. You know, we've proven that, you know, long before the term guardian. You know,
Okay.
police should be guardians.
Right.
The Quincy Police Department's been doing that since the 60s and 70s, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've really earned, through making, you know, the old saying, you make deposits in the bank of trust. You know?
Absolutely.
We've been doing that for a long
Absolutely.
time, and under my leadership, we're going to continue to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, again, sitting down and having conversations with some of the folk from the homeless populations, they did actually put a positive spin on the community policing, and that was a good sign for me to see that it's just not solely on the police department to solve the problems.
Right.
You know, these all of us are affected with these issues. Do you think that it's impossible to think that these things could be eradicated in the community? Do you think that this stuff will always exist? Is it realistic for me to even think that or approach it, that homelessness won't exist anymore, substance abuse won't exist anymore, mental health won't exist anymore? Because I noticed that they do have a change in the 911 system now, which is I think 988. Where if someone is dealing with some sort of mental health issue, that the police department just doesn't respond. I mean, they do respond, but they have sort of like a liaison person, a go-to person that understands the autonomy of what people are suffering from, and it's a softer way to approach it.
Right.
Does that exist?
Yeah. So I haven't heard of the 988 here in Quincy. But
I thought that was nationwide.
Oh,
That's
okay. Yeah, I don't
hadn't
know if
doing
we
that.
utilize that. No.
Oh, okay.
But to your first point about like a roundtable type of meeting, a lot of we do that. Our community services unit meets actually here in the library with
Oh, they do?
representatives from Father Bill's,
Okay.
Bay State Community Services, Manat Health.
Okay.
So they do have a working group that they try and, you know, look at some of these issues. But in terms of, you know, we're doing our best. We realize that we're not going to do it alone. We're going to build, you know, collaborations with our partners in healthcare, at Father Bill's, and you know, in Quincy Community Action, in our churches, you know. But in terms of going around each ward counselor, I hear from them all the time if there's a certain area or a certain problem that we need to address. Generally, they get it at their neighborhood meetings, and you know, we're going to start going to those more often throughout the city if they invite me at the ward meetings and hearing directly from constituents. But
Sure.
but yeah, no. So we do have right now like a working group that does meet, I think monthly, right here at the library.
Okay, that's wonderful,
So,
man.
yeah.
That's good to know, and because I know the listening audience is watching this, and they may want to know how they can actually get involved when it comes to their voice being heard when it comes to these issues.
Sure.
So, I want to thank you. Mr. Kennedy, for coming in and giving us your perspective. You know. On what the police department does here in Quincy, and I know that it's probably, because you know, I don't normally see a lot of the stuff that that other cities see, You know, when I was in California, the homelessness was like, it was right there in your face, you know.
Right.
Here it's kind of subtle, and it's kind of subtle and out of the way. You don't like really see it, you know, unless you're looking for it. So
Right.
obviously there might, I'm pretty sure that the work that you all doing and trying to clean that up, trying to organize it in a way where these issues can be addressed and resolved ultimately. And so I definitely want to thank you for coming in and giving us a better look at what you offer and what you all do in terms of trying to address these issues, which is difficult. It's a fine line to walk.
Sure.
It's not a. Maybe it's an easier approach to trying to think that this stuff can no longer exist no more. Maybe we can live in a world where that stuff, we won't see it anymore, you know?
Yeah. Well, we
And,
certainly pray for that day.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Wesley, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
For coming in.
Pleasure meeting you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.